हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ वासुदेवेन्द्र योगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते. So welcome everyone, this is the 11th session of Dharmika Samvadaha, and today we'll be covering the topic of Panchakosha and the Avastha Trayam. So, just would anyone like to give a brief recap over what we went over last time with regards to the Sharira Traya? If anyone recalls, you can just give an overview.
Yeah, so we saw the three bodies Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and Karana Sharira. And we saw the details of each of the body, and we saw how they are linked to each other. So basically, Sthula Sharira is the physical, the outer body. It has all the sense organs which are required to function. And Sukshma Sharira is basically the subtle body which basically deals with the physiological functions. And we saw the causal body, that is the Karana Sharira, which is related to avidya, that is ignorance.
Okay.
And yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, so that was a good description. Just one small correction actually. So the sense organs that you're talking about, so when we talk about the senses themselves, they are related to the Sukshma Sharira, whereas the physical organs that kind of hold the senses, like, if you have the ears, but the ears are not the sense of hearing. The ears are simply called the Golakam. So
Right.
the Golakam are like the physical attributes which contain the so-called sense of hearing, sense of sight, and so on. Like the eyes themselves do not see, but they make seeing possible because the sense of sight is what is Sukshma, whereas the physical eye is Sthula. So the
Right.
physiological function is one aspect of the Sukshma Sharira, which is the Pancha Pranas. But then apart from
Right.
that, you also have the mental aspects of Mano, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chittani. So the emotional mind, the intellectual mind, the memories, and the one that identifies, which is the Ahamkara. And
Right.
yeah, perfect. Like the Karana Sharira is just of the nature of ignorance, and it is called anirvachaniya because there are no physical attributes you can describe to it. So, when you talk about the physical body, you can describe attributes. You can look at it. Even when you talk about the mind, you can describe its attributes. That okay, sometimes it is happy, sometimes it is sad. So there are a lot of things that can be spoken about in terms of the nature of the mind and the body, but you can't really speak much or at all about the Karana Sharira as far as its nature is concerned, because all one can really reveal is that the nature of the Karana Sharira is of avidya. It is of ignorance, self-ignorance here more specifically, with respect to Vedanta. So that's why Karana Sharira is called Anirvachaniya. And as we spoke about last time, since this session is divided into 16 talks, first 8 dealing with introduction topics, Karma Yoga and so on, and the next 8 are dealing with the core Tattva Bodha topics, which enter the realm of Vedanta. So the first 8 may not necessarily have been very connected together because they're not meant to. They're just supposed to address a particular topic and then give some information about it. So, like for example, if you talk about Purushartha, you can't really combine that with Bhakti Yoga, for instance. I mean, you can draw connections, but one is not required in order to understand the other. All those 8 topics could be understood independently. But now these next topics, which we are going to be covering, they all draw in from each other. So they kind of build up on top of each other. So, last time since we saw Sharira Traya, that formed a good base, and then today we are going to actually build up on that base, and we'll talk about the Avastha Trayam. So, just let me share my PowerPoint. Okay, you're able to see, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Avastha Trayam, Avastha means a state, so what is, iski Avastha kaisi hai? Like, what is the state of that person? Avastha means state, and Trayam means three. So, we all have three states of experience in our life. The first thing which everyone is aware of course, is that we have the waking state where we are interacting with the rest of the world. And then we have Sapna Avastha, which is the dream state. And then you have the Sushupti Avastha, which is a deep sleep state. So, these are all the experiences that we can gather in our life are found within these three states. Whatever you do will only be confined to these three. Many times there's, people say that there's a different state I went to. There was some state called Samadhi state, and there was some state called Turiya state and all. So these are not classically meant to be understood as states themselves, because if you really think about it, these are the only three places you can exist. So I will actually experience rather. So I will touch upon that again once I finish, the definitions of these three. But we'll get into some of the common misconceptions also attached to the states. So, let's just look at Jagrat Avastha. Jagrat Avastha is your waking state. All your interactions in the world take place within Jagrat Avastha. Jagrat Avastha involves your physical body. It involves, your relationships and the roles you play and so on. So all of this is contained within the Jagrat Avastha. Whatever you do in your waking state is part of this state of experience, which is the Jagrat Avastha. Swapna Avastha is, rather different in the sense that yes, you experience more or less the same things as far as the mind is involved, but your physical body is no longer involved over there. So whatever you gather in the Swapna will only be at the mind level, at the Sukshma Shrira level. And in the Sushupti Avastha, you have no experience at all. In fact, you do experience, but what you experience is nothingness. So this is another misconception we'll again be dealing with in detail. So, let's just look at this little chart I have over here. Not this one, but this one, yeah. So here you have the three avasthas listed on the top, and here you have the three shariras. And the check marks, I'm not promoting Nike by any means. The check marks means that it's present over there, and the crosses that it is not present. So if you look at Jagrat Avastha, I definitely did mess this up, the chart. But let me make the chart again. Ignore the chart actually. The Jagrat Avastha, the Sthula, this Sukshma and Karana. Yeah, this is correct. No, never mind. The Sthula, Sukshma and Karana, all three are present within the Jagrat Avastha. So, your physical body is there. You're able to experience your physical body. You're able to experience other people's physical body and interact with them as well. You're able to see the rest of the jivas that are there around you. In the Jagrat Avastha, you also have the Sukshma Sharira, which is the mind. So, of course, you're able to experience a mind. You're able to think. You're able to imagine things. You're able to draw logical conclusions and so on. And so the mind is also very much involved in the Jagrat Avastha. And in the Karana Avastha, the Jagrat Avastha, you also have the Karana Sharira, which you are able to experience as simply the potency, the latent ignorance, the vidya, which gives rise to all the other experiences. And it also gives rise to the Sthula and Sukshma Sharira, as we talked about last time. So the Karana Sharira is there. It's present in dormant, unmanifest form during the Jagrat Avastha. Now, in the Sapna Avastha, you don't have the Sthula Sharira. There is no experience of the physical body. But can anyone tell me what you experience in the Swapna Avastha? So clearly you have experiences within your dream, right? So what are these experiences?
So we see like dreams, it's related to the memory, like whatever we have seen in the waking state, like whatever we have experienced maybe throughout the day or in the previous times, we see that in Swapna Avastha.
Perfect, excellent. And that is exactly what it is. So in the Jagrat Avastha, you gather memories. In your waking state, you gather memories, you build memories, you store memories, and then you relive them again, right? So when you're daydreaming, when you're having some form of imagination in your day-to-day life, then that is also kind of a way to recall the memories that you've already gathered. Whereas in Swapna Avastha, you don't build any new memories, you're only replaying the old ones. So, some people might ask that in my dream, I may have seen a scary monster, or I may have seen something that I don't really see in my day-to-day life. That is only partially true. So every element that is present in the dream will form or is present in your waking life, and whatever you've gathered will come together using different permutations and combinations to give rise to that dream experience. So, if you see a monster or a ghost in a dream, the different elements that comprise of the ghost you must have definitely encountered in your waking state, but you simply put them together in a different permutation which forms the experience in your dream state. So, let's say you wake up in a dream, and you go outside and wake up, it's morning, and then suddenly it's night again, and then you see that the wall in your house is of a different color, and then you see that you're kind of floating upstairs, and this there's all sorts of psychological plays that are going on. It is also said that if you want to make sure that this is a dream, then try looking at your hands, because sometimes your fingers, you'll have 4 fingers, sometimes you'll have 5 fingers, and it'll be very confusing. Another way, people say that if you really want to verify that you're dreaming, and if you have that small amount of free will involved, try to look at a clock. The clock will never give you the right time, because the details within the dream are not really present that much. Because if it's only a recollection of your waking memories, then the details may not have formed a very coherent world. And so that's why oftentimes the dream world appears to be not very real, and yet at the same time, when you're in the throng, when you're in the throes of the dream, it is very impossible for you to differentiate that. So whenever you're dreaming, nobody really says that this is a dream unless they have some kind of vivid dream, and they're somehow able to manifest the free will in a dream, which some people have tried to do experimentally, but it's not really something that we bother about. So the important thing here is that in the Jagrata Avastha, you exercise 100% free will. You're able to interact with people, and you're able to make choices, whereas in the dream you're more or less on a roller coaster ride. You cannot really control the events of the dream. You can only experience them, and you can only go along with whatever happens. So sometimes you see that though the illusion of free will may be present in a dream, you really don't have a choice over what happens. Even the not and I don't only refer to the dream world, but I also refer to the dream body. It's not able to control where it goes and what it does. It just flows along like a river. So the Jagrata Avastha is where you can create new karmas, and you can also experience the fruits of your karma in Jagrata Avastha. Whereas in the Swapna Avastha, you cannot create any new karmas simply because free will is absent. So only when free will is present, then you can create karmas. And this leads us to an important point, because in all the jivas and jantus that are out there, only the human being, or not, I won't say human, but I'll say the manushya, because this definition may apply universally as well. There may not be some species in a different planet where you can term that species as a human. But if it is able to manifest free will, and if it is able to make willful choices, then you can term that jiva as a manushya or a deva or gandharva or whatever. So any being, I will put it this way, that any being that is able to make free will choices is able to accumulate karmas. Whereas if you look at the plants and the animals, then they are only able to experience the fruits of their karma. So they are bhogyas, and they are not karmis. Karmis are the ones who act and the ones who gather karma. So in the Swapna Avastha, you are no different from an animal, because you're not able to, first of all, act out of free will. And secondly, you just get pulled along, with your various vasanas and whatever else that is that manifests in your dream. That is what drives the dream itself. So, many times if you experience that in your waking state, if you've been very preoccupied with a certain matter, with a certain person, with a certain way of thinking, then if you go to sleep at night, that is kind of what appears in the form of a dream. Not exactly in the same form, but definitely there'll be an element of it involved as well. So the dreams are, as Unnati was saying earlier, that they are the latent memories that you simply live out at night. And another interesting fact is that if you have a very pleasant dream, it's simply your punya that is fructifying in your sleep. And if you have an unpleasant dream like a nightmare, then it is simply your papam that is being manifest over there. So, be thankful if you have a nightmare, it's some papam that's getting wiped away, and it's not really affecting your waking life. Another purpose of dreams is that, a lot of people, not a lot of people, everybody has accumulated vasanas over countless lifetimes. And some of the vasanas we fulfill in our waking state. Some of the desires that we have, we also fulfill those. But some may still be latent, and the dream is a very good mechanism for the human body to be able to live through some of the experiences that they would not otherwise gather in their day-to-day life, in their waking state. So the dream serves a lot of purposes. It is a form of purging as well. You can say it's kind of emotionally, it's cathartic in that manner. So in the dream, you're not a karta, you're a bhokta. Bhokta is one who experiences alone, and a karta is one who does as well as experiences. So again, to make that distinction, in the waking state, you experience and you also do, you also perform, you also gather karma. And in the dream state, you only experience the fruits of your karma that you already gathered in your waking state. Um, So in the dream, your physical body is absent, but what is present is your sukshma sharira. You're able to interact with your own mind. In fact, the dream is nothing but a projection of your own mind. Your mind appears in the form of the dream. It creates the dream and then it experiences it as though the dream is external to it. And this is very reminiscent of the Dakshinamurti Stotram. So, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahiribhut Bhutam Yatha Nidraya. So, the second part of this shloka, it says that, the universe appears as though it is external to you, but in truth, it is nothing but your own manifestation. And then you enter it, and now it appears outside of you. That is the same principle that works in the dream. You create a dream and you enter it, and now it appears as though it is external to you, it's outside of you. And so that duality has been created, whereas in the dream itself, there is no duality. It is the body, the dream body is manifest from your mind, and the dream world is also manifest from your mind. So, if you're walking in a dream and you're breathing the air in the dream, you're looking at the sunset and the mountains and the stars and so on. Just try to imagine that all of this is nothing but you. It is the very creation of your mind, and yet you are identifying with the dream body, and therefore it appears outside of you. So that is a very cool thing to understand, and it's one of the important things. The dream state is really important for us to even understand Vedanta, because the same principle can be extrapolated to the waking state as well, but we'll cover that in the next talk, where the universe is nothing but a manifestation of the self. So, we'll draw a parallel over here and we'll try to understand more elaborately. And also in the dream, the Karana Sharira is present. The Karana Sharira is nothing but the essence of ignorance. And, that is where all the latent karmas and the experiences and everything else is stored. And so as your experience continues to unfold inside the dream as well, it comes out from the Karana Sharira. And then when you experience it again, it becomes a part of your Sukshma Sharira. So that is the connection over here. Now, in Sushupti Avasthā, that is distinct from the dream state, in which the Sthula Sharira is absent. The Sukshma Sharira is also absent, because the Sukshma Sharira is responsible for the thoughts, and the dream itself is a manifestation of the Sukshma Sharira. So, in the Sushupti Sushupti Avasthā, you don't have any dream, you don't have any thoughts, you don't have any experience whatsoever. In fact, you do have an experience, but what you're experiencing is ignorance. And therefore, if you have a dream, you're able to somehow measure the amount of time that passes by, right? Just as if you're sitting alone in a room somewhere over here, then you can estimate that, okay, maybe 20, maybe 30 minutes may have passed. You have that internal clock that's able to tell you. Same way, if you have a dream, you can maybe draw a very rough estimate about how long it lasted, or at least you can mark the passage of time. You know that some time has elapsed in the dream. But when you enter the Sushupti Avastha, even the experience of time ceases, the experience of space ceases. There is no experience of any object whatsoever in this world. All you know is nothing. And there's a very important distinction here between saying in the dream, in the Sushupti, I do not experience, whereas saying that I experience nothing. Here, nothing is like an empty set. If you studied mathematics, you know that there's a difference between zero and null. So if you say null, it just means that it's non-existent, it's not there. But if you say zero, it's kind of like it has a value of zero, right? There's a value. The value is assigned as zero. So same way, if you look at Sushupti over here, the ignorance is it's a real thing. It's something that is called bhavya. Bhavya means that which exists. So this ignorance has existence. Ignorance is not the absence of knowledge, but it is something that is opposed to knowledge. And this is extremely, extremely important to know. So, are there any questions on this so far before I get into more details? No? Okay. So, does anyone know about the debates between, Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism? Have you heard much about Shankaracharya and his commentaries and what his guru debated and all?
What I heard, I can recall only half part of it. There was debate on zero. So Gautam Buddha said that entire Jagat or entire universe is Shunya, Then Adi Shankaracharya said that, okay, if that is Shunya, what is that body which is containing that Shunya? So it was, I guess this was a topic conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So, you have several schools of Buddhism. There are a couple I'm aware of, like you have the Madhyamikas, the Yogacharas, the Shranik Vijnanavadas, and then you have the Shunyavadas. So I think, during the time of Shankara, in fact, this was something that uh, Kumarila Bhatti, he's the one who debated the Buddhists, and he's the one who really established the truth of the Vedas. So, as they, we actually, I guess we touched upon it earlier, but if you have a tennis tournament or any tournament for that matter, then you'll have these, quarterfinals and semifinals and finals and so on, right? So if you have reached the finals and if you defeat your opponent, then you don't need to defeat everybody else who has already been defeated in order to show that you are better. So same way, Kumarila Bhatti had defeated the Buddhists in a debate, and the Buddhists started kind of like more or less leaving India. And Shankaracharya defeated Kumarila Bhatti's student in a debate, and therefore he did not need to defeat the Buddhists because the Buddhist stance had already been defeated by the Purva Mimamsakas, whereas Shankaracharya's unfolding of Vedanta, which is Uttara Mimamsa, had already established supremacy over the Purva Mimamsakas. And so what Kumarila Bhatti and other Vaidikas, when they debated these Buddhists and Vaidika standards, all the trouble lies over deep sleep. That is where all the issue lies. So, even the Buddhists will agree that, yeah, there is a waking state. Even the Buddhists will agree that, yeah, we all dream. There's no disagreements over there. But as far as what deep sleep goes, the deep sleep, the Shushupti Avasthā, that is where the difference between what we understand the Atma to be versus what they understand the Atma to be, that pops in. So, at least some schools of Buddhism, what they say is that in deep sleep, the self is absent. There is no Atma, there is no consciousness in the self, in the Sushupti, because there is no experience at all. And if you were there, then there would be an experience, right? So, whereas what Vedas say is that you are always there in deep sleep also, but what you experience is nothing. You experience nothing, you experience ignorance, when here ignorance is something that has a value, and that value is ignorance over here. It is something that's real. Whereas when you look at the Buddhist way of thinking, they say that you have no experience at all because you are not there. So another analogy, the way to understand this is that, let's say if there's a person in a completely dark room, isolated room where there's absolutely zero light. Now one person can say that there's no light, therefore I am blind, right? That could be one conclusion. The other conclusion could be that I am able to see, but I see the darkness. I'm able to see the darkness, and that is a difference. So that is completely changing the game over here, because one perception of what the Atma is says that you stop existing within deep sleep. The other perception is where they say that, yeah, you always exist in deep sleep, but you know nothing as an object. The self is a subject, Atma is a subject, but nothing is the object. And here you know ignorance. You are aware of ignorance. You are able to cognize ignorance. And so that is the crux that led to at least one of the important things between Buddhism and Vedanta. So basically the Buddhists say that you are absent, and so then there's one school of thought which is called Shranika Vijnanavada, and Shranika Vijnanavada means you keep entering and you keep leaving. When you get out in the waking world, then you enter back into this life, and consciousness comes back. And when you go into deep sleep, consciousness dies, and next day a new consciousness comes, and then again the consciousness dies. And so that is called Shanikta Vijnanavada. And then you have Shunyavada, which says that there is nothing, the nature of reality is a big shunya, it's a big zero. So that leads to another, logical, I guess, discrepancy, because something cannot be supported by nothing. There has to be an adhishthanam, a base. And so Vedanta says that the adhishthanam, the base for this whole jagat, is Brahman. Whereas the Buddhists say that the base for this jagat is Shunya, which is nothingness. So, Swami Paramathananda ji says that we are able to accommodate Shunya into Brahmavada, into our teachings of Vedanta, but they are not able to accommodate Brahman into Shunya, which obviously makes sense. So, for instance, if if they talk about zero, we are able to look upon zero as an object, right? So this is again, for those who are technically minded, there's a difference between null and zero. The null set, if I say the value, this is null, it means it does not exist. And if I say it is zero, then zero is an assigned value which exists, but the value there is zero. And so, we incorporate their shunya as a value, as something that belongs to mithya. So their shunya is also mithya for us. So when they say that there is a lack of experience, the ignorance that they talk about, we say that yes, ignorance is bhavya. It is an existing object, and that is something that we are able to objectify. The self objectifies the non-self. And over here, the zero, the shunya, the ignorance, or whatever they want to call it, the ignorance is the non-self. It is the avidya. And the avidya is an object of our experience. But since the avidya does not have any particular form, since it is anirvachaniya, therefore avidya cannot be, what do you say? It cannot be described, it cannot be spoken about, but you can speak about it as an experience where you say, I knew nothing. So the Buddhist will say, I did not know any, I did not know, and the Vedika will say, I knew nothing. I knew this nothing, and that nothing is the object for me. And so when you wake up the next day, you can say, yeah, I knew nothing in the deep sleep. I knew nothing. There was no experience that, I experienced nothing, rather than saying I did not experience it all. So anyway, that was a long detour, but definitely important to understand in establishing the differences. So are there any questions on the three avasthas so far?
Can we say that the Sushupti Avastha is based on Karana Shariram? Like, because you said that there is no functioning, there's zero functional thing which has been observed. So, can we say that it's based on Karana Shariram? Like the dominant?
Yes. So, Karana Sharira is dominant within the Sushupti Avastha because it is the Karana Sharira alone, as you said, which is known as the Sushupti. So, initially I thought my chart was not correct because I was used to reading it horizontally, but here it's supposed to be read vertically. So, if you see the Sushupti Avastha, the Karana Sharira alone is present. When you are there in Swapna Avastha, you don't really think about the Karana, right? Because you have the Sukshma, you have this dream experience. When you're there in Jagrat, you have this, thought, imagination experience, and you also have the Sthula, which is the physical experience that is out there, of the physical body and the physical world. But in Sushupti, since you don't have the Sthula and Sukshma, what takes predominance is Karana. But here, the Karana itself, it's not something that you are able to visualize, but it is something you're able to infer after the fact that, yeah, I knew nothing. And this nothing over here was nothing other than ignorance. And this ignorance is an object. It is an object of my knowledge. It is a bhavya cheese. It's something that is an object. So you have two things. You have something which is abhava. Abhava means that which is non-existent, and then you have something called bhava, which is existence, something that exists. And so Karana Sharira is also bhava. Ignorance is also bhava. This emptiness, whatever that is, experience is also bhava. And so yeah, you're right. That Karana Sharira is the predominant Sharira within the Sushupti Avastha. So is this topic good?
Yes.
Okay. So then now we'll look at the next one, and we'll see the Avastha Trayam. Sorry, the Kośa Panchakam. We covered the Avastha Trayam right now. So Panchakoshas are the 5 layers of personality that you have, the 5 different things that you really identify with, right? So if whenever we go out in the world, we identify and we have different personalities that we put forward. So the first is the Annamaya Kosha, which is the physical layer. Does anyone know what Annamaya is? Anna. If I say Annam, what does that stand for?
Food.
Exactly. So the physical body is made of food, and therefore it is called the Annamaya Kosha, the layer that we identify with, which is made of the food. So and this also helps us connect to the rest of the world, right? Because if you think about it, the food comes from the ground, and it comes from the soil, and it comes from the air. In fact, just a slight detour. Many people think that the food, the crops that we grow, they come from the ground, but in reality, almost 95% of the stuff that is there within trees, and the bark of the trees, the leaves of the trees, and the seeds, and so on, it all comes from the air. The ground only supplies a few trace minerals, like calcium, potassium, whatever, to get the chain running, to get the nutrients flowing. but the majority of the substance of the tree itself comes from the air. It comes from carbon dioxide. And so, if you really think about it, it's beautiful because what you eat comes from the rest of the world around you. And when you eat a tree, you're basically eating a fraction of the air from all around the world. The carbon dioxide that is there is really constituting your body, right? You have the the carbohydrates and the proteins and the fats. All of this contain carbon, and this carbon comes from all over the world. It doesn't come only from the ground. And so, this helps us understand that this physical body that I'm identifying with so strongly, it is as inert as the rest of the world around me. If I look at air and if I look at, if there's some wind blowing by, you never think of it as a living force. Yes, it might be something that you're able to experience, but it is not sentient. So, similarly, a physical body that you identify with so really that, if a person is fat, then he identifies as being fat. If a person is, very skinny, he'll call himself anorexic and so on. And so these different, mental stigmas that we carry because of our physical body, it is absurd. It is so childish. And understanding Vedanta really helps us break free from these shackles where we identify with how big or small we are based on our physical bodies. And so everything that is born of food, it is annajanyam. So it is something that is born from food. That is a physical body. The food that you eat itself comes from the world around you. And so, you are in a way, from the body level as well, connected with the rest of the planet. Everything that is there is connected through this annam. So, that is a physical layer. The second is the pranamaya kosha, which is a physiological layer. So the first, you can call it the anatomy, right? The physical body. But now you have the pancha pranas. Can anyone recall the pancha pranas we had last time? Would anyone like to?
Yeah. The prana, apana, jnana, samana, are these the ones?
Yeah, correct. So it's prana, apana, udana, vyana, and samana. So, prana is like the respiration, apana is the excretion, evacuation. Then the vyana is circulation, samana is digestion, and udana is like the reversal cycle that we talked about, right? So just a brief recap about So, this is the physiological layer. And as we spoke about earlier, that now we'll be building up from whatever you studied. And so I won't really go too much into detail, but I'm glad you recall this. So the pranamaya kosha is the physiological layer of our personality, right? So, we looked at identifying with the physical body, but some people, even if you look at Hindus themselves in the yoga school of thought, and the people who are following yoga, they identify with their pranas. So if something is going, I mean, not just they, but all of us, right? So if there's some problem in your body, or if there's a circulation issue, or if there's, I don't know, if you're like constipated, whatever problem that you have in the body, you identify with that as well, right? So if your physiological functions are not very healthy, then somehow you feel that, oh, I am not doing well. The body is not doing well, I am not doing well. So that kind of identification just happens for all of us. And so that is also something that is born out of ignorance, and we need to break free from that. So, earlier we saw that we should not really be identifying with the physical personality, because it doesn't make sense. It is something that's born out of, it's born out of food. It is food. And somebody asked me, why can you not be the physical body? And my retort to that would be that if you are eating a certain food, if you're eating a banana, you can't point at the banana and say that this is me, right? Nobody ever says that unless you have some serious issues. So, a person cannot look at the food and say that I identify with this food. And yet the same food, when it rearranges itself to form your physical body, then how can that rearrangement suddenly become you, right? It is something that you're able to function through, but that doesn't mean that it is you. It is no better than saying that the car I travel in is me. Because if something happens to the car, then something happens to me. Yeah, for some people, they may be emotionally affected by that as well. But in truth, this doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And similarly, the physical body is a vehicle through which we function, through which the manaha, I mean the antakaran expresses. And so it is not who you are, but it's something you express through. Similarly, the pranamaya kosha is also not really who you are, but it is something that you are expressing yourself. It's one of the functions of the physical body, and it is the physiological function which allows it to carry life. So the prana is responsible for giving, it's the life force of the body, and the physiological functions of the body lend it this life force. It makes the life force possible. The third layer of our personality is the emotional layer. So let's say a person has even overcome some of their obstacles in terms of identifying with the physical body. They no longer do that. They are very comfortable with the body, however they are, whatever. They don't identify with it any longer, or to that large extent. But still, you may identify with your emotions. If you identify with being happy, with being sad, with being angry, with being upset, and all these different emotional traumas that you go through, that experience is still there. So if the mind undergoes a certain experience, then you may say that, oh, I am happy, I am sad, right? A good way to really loosen this hold that the mind has over you is by objectifying it. So you can see that the mind is unhappy, and automatically that there'll be a distance that's created between the self and the mind. And so the problems of the mind will not really be superimposed upon the self. And so the person with, who identifies with the Manomaya Kosha, he's basically identifying with the emotional layer of personality. The fourth layer is the intellectual layer. So, you may identify with how much you know, you may identify with how much you don't know, you may identify with your knowledge, you may identify with your ignorance. If you think that you know something and you're able to, this is like free will based. So if you feel that you've done something, you've achieved something, then that is again your Vijnanamaya Kosha. So you're identifying with your intellect over here. And this also is not a very healthy thing, because sometimes you may be able to achieve some good things, you may be able to know good things, but then if you begin to identify with all the things you don't know, then you will be in a huge soup, right? There will be a big problem over there, because the amount of things that we don't know are far, far, far greater than the small things that we do know. So if a person says they know physics, they know chemistry, what they are really saying is that they know a very small, insignificant portion of these subjects, because there's so much about the world and so much about each of these subjects that we don't know. There's an entire universe out there which is unknown to us. Today we've just reached about some 13.7 billion light years through our visual telescope. We are able to see only that far back, but the universe that's unknown to us is far larger, far vaster. Even if you look at the small scale of things, today, I think 300 years back, 200 years back maybe, we talked about the cell, and we thought that the cell was the indivisible unit. There's nothing smaller than that. And then we came across the molecules and the DNAs, and then you came down to the atomic level and subatomic level, where you talk about the nucleus and the electrons and the protons and so on. And then some, I don't know, 30 or so years back, we started talking about quarks, which form the basic building blocks of the nucleus of the protons and the neutrons. And then someday we'll find something even smaller than that. So the search for truth, as far as the material world is concerned, is endless. And so we cannot really identify with the things we know and what we don't know, or how intelligent we are and how intelligent we aren't, because we can only think from our own capacity. And every time, this is a huge fallacy amongst many scientists, where they somehow believe that they have reached very close to the truth, but then all they are able to see is the horizon that is close to them, right? And once they reach the end of that horizon, there will be another endless horizon in front of them, and every time they cross one horizon, they'll come across another. And so the search is endless. If you're trying to seek truth through material sciences and through understanding the world of objects, then there's never an end to it. Because now, as I think I spoke about earlier, this layer, this mithya layer, is an endless carpet, one layer up on top of another. So every time you feel that you've uncovered one layer, there's another layer below it, and there's one more below it, and you'll continue to go endlessly until you realize that there's no end to it. And this is just the nature of the world. And so there are so many things we know, there are far, far, far more things we don't know. And identifying with this knowledge itself is not a very wise thing to do. So these are the first 4 layers we looked at. And the last layer is the Anandamaya Kosha, and this is you can look upon it as a dormant layer. For instance, many times if somebody says something like very mild, but if it hits a nerve, somehow you'll erupt. You'll get very angry, you'll get agitated, you'll shout at the person, you'll scream all sorts of expletives. So there's there are some things which we are very conscious of in our mind, and then there's also this unconscious, subconscious layer which continues to bubble through, in our life, and it is another thing we identify with, and then it bubbles through, and then it goes away again. It becomes unmanifest. And so, as they say, I don't really like using the expression, but ignorance is bliss, right? So there are so many problems that we have in terms of our subconscious mind, so many vasanas. Imagine countless lifetimes of trauma that you may have experienced, but it's all present within subconscious form. It's all present, kind of unmanifest, and it's at the deepest recesses of your antakarana. And so only when somebody says something, out of the blue, and then strikes a chord, and then you'll become very agitated, right? And so the subconscious mind has this ability to remain dormant and in hiding until there is kind of a catalyst for it to emerge. And so this entire layer of personality which we are completely unaware of is the Anandamaya Kosha. And another thing is that this also includes the happiness portion, right? So for example, let's say if a person likes ice cream, I don't, but if somebody likes ice cream and they take a bite of it and then they experience this deep joy, then when they think that this joy is coming from the ice cream itself, it's not true, right? It is only your Atma Swarupa, it is your Swarupananda that is shining. But you wrongly attribute the happiness to be contained within the object. The same object, if you look at ice cream, can give sadness to another person, because if he has a sore throat and he takes a bite, then again his throat will start aching. And so suddenly the object of pleasure for one person has become an object of displeasure for another person, right? And that is why the common expression that one man's poison is another man's something. I forgot the expression, but something that makes one person happy may not necessarily make another person happy. It may even make him sad. And so this Anandamaya Kosha, where we identify with happiness and joy and fulfillment coming from objects, that is again another layer of our personality where it's born out of ignorance. And so the fact that I am the self and I am the essence of Swarupananda, I am Swarupananda, that is again dormant. It is lying covered by ignorance, just as the rest of your things in a subconscious mind are lying covered. So any questions on this so far? The 5 layers?
The 5 layers are based on the 3 bodies which we saw. So why do we require this separately, like as a layer of personality?
Because so that's a good question. And when you look at the Sthula Sharira, we, the Sharira simply talk about the objective makeup of the individual, of the Jiva, right? So if we are talking about the makeup of the Jiva as far as the constituency of the Jiva is concerned, then you can see that it is made of the Sthula, the Sukshma, and the Karana Sharira. But now when we talk about the Koshas, we are talking about the layers of personality that a Jiva begins to identify with, right? So the Sthula, the Sukshma, and the Karana, they form the Jiva, whereas the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha are the various layers of personality that the Jiva develops. So, if you look at the Sthula Sharira, the first layer is the physical layer. That is another personality we have. It's something we identify with deeply. It's entrenched into our human psyche, where we look at ourselves as the body, and the limitations of the body become our own limitations. So the first 3 are addressing the makeup and the constituency of the Jiva, and the next 5 are addressing the layers of personality that the Jiva identifies with. And whatever problems belong to these 5 layers, suddenly they start belonging to the Jiva as well, because of that false identification. So, in a way, you can say that it is only a stretching of the 3 shariras into these 5 personalities. The 3 shariras also have these 5 different personalities.
Okay.
So that is really all that is there as far as the topic goes. But does anyone have questions about what we've covered, or would you like to discuss something? Okay, let's do a small not I won't say quiz, but let's have a small discussion. So I'll just name a few things that you identify with, and you try to classify it as a layer, right? What kosha does it fall under? So let's say if somebody says you're fat, what layer, and you feel bad about it, so what layer are you identifying with? What kosha is this?
It's the Manomaya Kosha.
No, it's Annamaya Kosha, because you're identifying with the physical body, right?
Okay.
So if a
हाँ
person says you're fat, and then if a person feels bad about it, then that is like, okay, chalo, my body is fat, and therefore I am fat, and therefore there's something wrong with me, and therefore I identify with it. That's Annamaya
हाँ
Kosha. So if a person,
That can be Anandmaya Kosha also.
oh, sorry,
That's
sorry,
second layer.
did I say Annamaya Kosha? What did I say?
Anandamaya Kosha.
No, it's Annamaya Kosha.
Annamaya Kosha.
Huh.
Okay.
It's not Anandamaya Kosha, it's Annamaya only. Okay, if a person says that you're not very smart, you're stupid, then what are you identifying with? And if you feel bad about it,
the same.
Vijnanamaya Kosha, right? Because here you are
Yeah.
identifying with your intellect, your knowledge, whatever you know, whatever you don't know. So so if you think that you're only as big as your knowledge, or as big as uh, your intellect can take you, then you're identifying with this layer. Okay, suppose somebody says something to you which you're not very aware of at this point, but it kind of gives rise to a latent tendency, and you just get frustrated out of no good for no good reason. Then what is that? What kosha is that?
The Anandamaya Kosha.
Yes, because this is where you have this entire layer of personality which is dormant. So there are many things that you identify with which are unknown to you in the immediate present, but they are just lying there waiting to erupt, and then it's going to cause all sorts of problems. So that's our Anandamaya Kosha.
So then, what is Manomaya Kosha then? If emotions are linked everywhere, like if they are linked in every kosha, then how separate is Manomaya Kosha with others?
No, Manomaya Kosha is not linked in everywhere, right? So you see, if you're identifying with a physical body and something about your physical body upsets you, if somebody says something about your body, or if you feel something about your body, then that's Annamaya Kosha, right? Similarly, if you are going through some physiological issue, some digestive problem, respiratory problem, whatever, and you start thinking that, oh, I am so sick, this is really troubling me. If you're identifying with your physiology, and then again it's your pranamaya kosha that's kicking in. If you're identifying with your emotions, that I am happy, I am sad, I am upset, I am joyful, I am whatever, then that state of the mind, that state of your emotions, if that is something you identify with, then that's manomaya kosha. Vijnanamaya kosha is where you are identifying with your knowledge, with your intellect, right? So I am happy, I am sad is distinct from this is how much I know, this is how much I don't know, this is how smart I am, this is how stupid I am. So this is again different. It's a kind of yeah, it's all related to the antakarana, but yet it's kind of like compartmentalized as a different layer, right? And Anandamaya Kosha is the layer where it's something that's very dormant. And also, suppose you undergo a very happy experience, you look at a good scenery and you feel very joyful. So that happiness which gets manifest, you somehow think that it is coming from the object of experience, the scenery, the landscape ahead of you. But in reality, it is only a Swarupananda, and yet something is getting satiated through that scenery that you're looking at, right? Something gets satisfied, and you don't know that what exactly it is, and this is again covered by ignorance. And therefore, what you're okay, so this is very important to understand, right? All ananda, all sort of joy, all happiness, whatever you want to call it, it only is a manifestation of your Swarupananda. Everything, there's one thing called Vishayananda, which is the joy that comes from objects, the sense objects and the experiences. Vishaya is a subject, or whatever, some object that's there. And Swarupananda is nothing but your own Ananda. So whenever we feel that we are getting some sort of satisfaction from Vishayananda, in reality it is nothing but an expression of your Swarupananda. And there's an entire chapter in this text called Panchadashi, which is addressing this issue. So whenever you feel that you're happy about something, it is only your own self which is shining through. So when we take that happiness to be coming from a particular object or a situation or an experience, that is again covered by a layer of ignorance, and that is why we believe that. And therefore it is the Anandamaya Kosha. And the Anandamaya Kosha also, it is a two-edged sword, right? One is where you feel that the happiness is coming from outside, and the second is that all the deep emotional trauma or the vasanas and whatever it is that is laying there buried until it comes to fruition, it is all again stored in this what do you call it, Karana Sharira. And so until it fructifies, it is there aram se, and you're happy about it. You're blissfully ignorant about all the problems that exist in your life, in your subconscious. But then if somebody says one thing, they do that little bit of chugli, and then again, you'll erupt. It'll just come out, and then again it'll go back in and it'll become dormant. So this is the Anandamaya Kosha. So you can say that the Anandamaya Kosha actually relates to everything else, but the Anandamaya Kosha is the dormant layer which relates to everything else.
Okay.
Whereas all the others can be quite compartmentalized, right? Okay, now another question, like suppose you buy an expensive car and somebody praises your car. They say that, okay, this is, wow, what a good car you have. Then that elation that comes from it, what kosha will this be? What are you identifying with?
Manomaya Kosha.
Manomaya kosha, why?
I mean, you feel that also depends. For example, if the car is close to you, or it's kind of a bond with you,
Yeah.
then it will be Manomaya Kosha.
Yeah.
It can also be Pranamaya Kosha.
No, it can't be pranamaya kosha, right? Because if you have a digestive problem, then if you identify, yeah, that's a pranamaya. This is not pranamaya. It's not annamaya also. But yeah, you could call it either manomaya, or you could even, maybe term it as anandamaya if that plays suddenly just hits a chord and you feel really good about it. So yeah, it could be manomaya or anandamaya. Like I said, the anandamaya kind of is the underlying denominator over here. And so if I state it as manomaya and anandamaya, then there's no conflict here, because anandamaya is the dormant aspect of all of these, whereas the manomaya, vijnanamaya, and all are more like the active, conscious layer of all of these. So that's correct. Even if a person buys a big house and then they feel very proud of themselves, right? Here again, you're kind of addressing some kind of an issue, some kind of I will not. I mean, if I say it's an issue to feel good about having something grand, most people will look at me like I'm nuts, that what is wrong in being proud of what you have and all. But in reality, one has to understand that I am so much beyond all of this. I am so much larger than these objects that I possess, because your positions and your possessions and your perception that people have should not really determine who you are or how happy or how sad you are. You have to be an independent person, and this independence can only come through firm abidance in self-knowledge. So the self is I mean, the whole jagat is nothing but the self, right? And so if these tiny trinkets are able to make a person happy, that just shows that there is so much dormant unhappiness that is lying there, and slowly, one by one, these things get addressed. So the Anandamaya kosha is something that keeps bubbling up, and then again it becomes unmanifest. It goes back down and comes back up again, depending on the situations you encounter in your life. And so this, when psychologists are dealing with issues that people have, modern psychology, it is largely dealing with the Anandamaya kosha.
Because can we say that there are a lot of bottled up emotions which I mean, I have done counseling of people, and that is one issue which I really face, that suddenly people start expressing all the things which are there in their which were there lying in their mind since a long time. It was present in their unconscious state, which suddenly just comes out of a sudden. So the reason with which they are in front of me, it's different,
Yes.
but the story behind it is different.
Yes, exactly. And that is absolutely true. So this is, you can say, it's like the psychological thing. But now, I'm glad you brought this point up, because now you're able to identify the difference, right, between Manomaya and Anandamaya. When that person comes to you, and when all the problems are like actively blah 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 you're talking about the problems, then that is when they are active at present, and that is when it becomes Manomaya kosha. But when the problems were lying dormant, then that was when they were in the Anandamaya kosha, right? So the Anandamaya kosha gives rise to the other layers. So the dormant layer suddenly becomes, there's no word like undormant, but it becomes manifest. And that manifest layer manifests as all these other layers, so physical, physiological, emotional, intellectual. And then when suddenly you stop thinking about them and they are bottled up, and they are at the back of your mind somewhere, then again it goes back into Anandamaya. And again, when something gets triggered, it's a trigger, right? They call it an emotional trigger or a psychological trigger. So when that trigger switch hits, then again it becomes manifest, and then it'll become Manomaya kosha and so on. So the Anandamaya Kosha is where all these things are bottled up, maybe for a few years, maybe for countless lifetimes also. There might be something that you will encounter, and suddenly you'll just start like pouring tears, and then you'll realize that okay, this had been inside me for so long, and I couldn't let it out because I was ignorant about it for so long. But now it's no longer in my subconscious. It's come out on the I guess the conscious side of your mind. And so that is when these koshas become manifest, and then they are things you identify with. And so the whole pursuit of Vedanta is only, to uphold self-knowledge, to come to the firm understanding that I am, Satchidananda Brahma. But in order to get to there, we still need to address all our layers of personality, because there are so many emotional traumas that we've undergone for so long that we need to address them one by one. We need to come to terms with these layers. We need to incorporate them together into one whole. We need to understand that these layers of personality are only things through which I express, but they are not in reality I, the self. And so, slowly, as a person becomes more and more vigilant and they become more in tune with this knowledge, then these layers have they only become a means of expression, but they are no longer things you identify with. And the identification starts dropping slowly. It becomes lesser and lesser, and then you feel yourself becoming freer. Because if you're identifying with any of these layers, then the problems of that layer will belong to you. The problems of the body will belong to you. The problems of your physiology will belong to you. Your emotional problems will belong to you. Your intellectual problems will belong to you. And all the countless lifetimes of subconscious issues that are stored within your antakarana, they will all belong to you. And so we have to get rid of this identification. We have to get rid of this kartrutva and bhoktutva. So this doership and enjoyership. And we have to be, ultimately abiding in the knowledge of the self, which is the topic of the next session. And that'll be Atma. So, so far everything we've covered is kind of like geared to take us to this understanding of Atma, and we'll see what the Atma is next time. So, any last thoughts before we wrap up on these two topics? They were pretty short, but as you can see, it kind of like builds gradually in layers. So you can say, this whole study of Vedanta is like a kosha. It's kind of like building up on the various prakriyas and the models that we have, and then you'll see how they're connecting together. So, for the people who are planning to do the Vedanta exercise, that the small assignment we were talking about, this is a good way to think about it, right? Like you use a tool like Visio, and then you'll see that you have the 3 shariras, and then they connect to the 5 koshas. So you can try something like this. You can start building relationships. You can start creating these schemas and try to connect various ideas together and see how they come together as a whole. So, has anyone started?
No, I haven't started. I'll start over this week.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about what exactly the assignment was for? I mean, like Smitaji, are you, do you have a, okay. Don't type, please, because I can't read really. Can you talk? Wait. Oh, another thing, the thing is I can't read anything since when the presentation is going on, I'm not really able to see the screen. So.
I think I'll start over this weekend.
Okay, I see. But the objective is clear, right? That we want to connect all the topics and try to see, how Vedanta stands as a consolidated whole.
Yeah, that's right.
It'll be very interesting. I actually finished the first 8, so slowly I'm actually gonna start building up.
But you could suggest us some, models which we can work on, because that my imagination doesn't reach so high. So if you could suggest a few models that we could work on, I mean, it would make it easier.
Yeah, I'll give you some. That's why I said that once you start working, then you can always like just, if you want to approach me or whatever, and then I can take a look at it and I can tell you if something is correct, or if you want to, maybe draw different connections. So that's the thing, that if you start working on it, and then if I'm actively involved in what you're doing, then I'm able to maybe like walk through. But one example I can give you is like if you look at the 2 chapters we studied, the Sharira Trayam and the Panchakam, that's very easy to connect. In fact, I've done it right here in front of you guys. The Sthula is Annamaya Kosha, Sukshma is Pranamaya, Manumaya and Vijnanamaya, and the Karana Sharira is nothing but the Anandamaya Kosha. So that way you've kind of like drawn one schematic. Now you try to see how other things connect to it, right? Like we in the previous talk we spoke about the 5 senses and so on. So you see where that comes under. Then you'll see, okay, that comes under Sukshma Sharira. Then you look at the 5 organs of knowledge, right? Oh, sorry, not organs of knowledge, but 5 organs of action. So you have the hands and the feet and the mouth and tongue and so on. So all of these things, where do they fall under? They come under the Pancha Karmendriyas. And then you look at the 5 pranas you have, right? Vyana, Udana, Samana, Apana. So all of these things come under the 5, what do you call it? Pranas, the Pancha pranas. And then you have the Antakarana. So you have Manoha, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chittani. This come under the Antakarana. So that way, just see that everything is connecting, and then you try to understand what the Antakarana comes under, and this and that. It's all. I can tell you for a fact that every single topic you covered can be modeled as a schema. You can put it all in one page, and you'll see that everything this connects to this connects to that. Everything is connected. There are some things which may not be connected directly to others, but they are all connected through a line. So another idea I can give you is if you look at the 4 Purusharthas we have, right? You can't say that the Moksha Purushartha is directly connected somehow to the Koshas. There's no connection there. But then indirectly everything will be connected. So you can see that there's a linear connection between all of them. And some places they may also be kind of like a 1:2 or 1:5 or whatever kind of a connection. So you can draw these different logical schemas. I'll show you a few examples. In fact, I've already done most of the work. If you look at the presentation, most of it should be done for you guys also. Like, look at this, for instance. Right? So here you have Sharira Traya, and then you have 3 Shariras, and then you have all of these things that come under it. Like this, just keep drawing connections. This is one thing. Then you have Sadhana Chatushtaya, right? That way you can draw another. Then you have the Ishwar, what is Manda Bhakti? What is, this is like, you can say, ways to worship Ishwara. This is like the different roles that Ishwara plays, and this is like the different rupas of Ishwara. So then that is another connection you can draw. Then Jnana Yoga comes under Shravana Manam Nidhyasana. So then you connect that. Then how is Jnana Yoga connected to Karma Yoga? It's connected here, right? So Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga are part of the Dviveda Nishtas. There are only twofold parts. That's Karma and Jnana. Then Karma Yoga is again divided into Karma and Upasana. So it's very easy actually. I can give you one clue that all the individual stuff we have done, take all of those individual pieces and you try to connect the pieces that are given to you. That's it. Okay. So shall we like wrap up for today? I guess it wasn't a very long session. 1 hour, just under. Okay. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kathau Vande Bhagavanto Punah Punah Ishwaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Maunam Vyakhya Prakatita Para Brahma Tattvayutvanam Varshishthante Vasadarshi Ganairavratam Brahmanishthaihi Acharyendram Karakalita Chinmudramananda Rupam Svatma Ramam Mudita Vadanam Dakshinamurti Mire Vatapitapi Samipe Bhumi Bhage Nishannam Sakalamuni Jananam Jnanadatar Marat Tribhuvana Gurumisham Dakshinamurti Devam Janana Marana Dukkha Cheda Daksham Namami Chitram Vatataror Mule Vriddha Shishya Guru Yuva Gurustu Monam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Samshaya Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam विषजे भवरोगिणां गुरुवे सर्वलोकानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। See you next week.